Okay, I went to Family Dollar and I found this really cute pot for flowers and stuff like that. But I wanted, even though it had a cool design and cool color, I wanted to kind of use my white yarn and create kind of like a cover for it. And so when I saw this one, it was only $1 again, so I thought it was really cheap. It was small. I immediately thought of the small blue Nifty Knitter loom that I had. This one has 24 pegs. And what I did is I picked up some cotton yarn. This is 100% cotton. I know I don't usually use cotton yarn in these videos, but I splurged on this. I also have some that a friend gave me as well. But I wanted to do the white because I really think it'll look really a nice contrast against this to show the colors underneath. And I'm only going to use one strand of it. You can decide after seeing this that you'd want to double up. That's up to you. Like I said, I just still want to see the color as well. So let me go ahead and move this out of my way. Okay. So first of all, this pot has a diameter across of about 4 inches, and I laughed because I could actually set it inside the loom, so I thought that was kind of funny. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the base. This is going to sit inside or sit on top of the yarn. So we're going to actually do a drawstring cast on. And this is pretty simple. I've talked about this cast on many times in the video. So you do your slip knot first, and then go ahead, and this time I'll recommend, because we're using a Nifty Knitter, that we can place it right here on the little knob and then just tighten it up. And now keep it out of the way as we do the drawstring cast on, which, if you remember, you just work your way back and forth. I'm hoping you can see it right, even though I've got a white backdrop there. And again, it's just back and forth all the way around till you get to the start. Once you get back to the start, you're going to lay your working yarn, in front, as you remember with doing the drawstring cast on. I have a video that's specific to this if you need to look at that as well. And all you're going to do now is you're going to knit over wherever there is 2 strands, and this will lock it in place. So go ahead and kind of hold your yarn over to the side, and then go ahead and just knit over wherever there are 2 strands on the peg. And as you get back to the beginning, again, go ahead and knit that last one over, and then you're going to push all this down out of your way so that we can do the next stitch that we want to do. So again, we're going to come over here, and then we can start wrapping our peg like normal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I call the tight stitch. I'll put the correct term for it right there. But this is the stitch that I like to do, where you wrap the pegs so there's 3 loops on it, and then you take the bottom loop over the top 2. So you can go ahead and gently wrap. Don't wrap too tightly, otherwise it'll be hard to knit over, but just go around, wrapping once. This will give you the two loops. Go ahead and wrap it again. Now if you're new to doing the tight stitch, I would recommend working 1 peg at a time. It kind of makes it easier for you to make sure you don't lose your yarn and that you don't wrap too tight. So I'm going to actually work it 1 peg at a time, just show. And again, with this stitch, you just take the bottom loop up over the top 2. And go ahead and wrap the next peg or the next couple pegs, whichever you choose. And again, take that bottom loop up and over the top. Okay, we have 2 last pegs here to wrap for this section. Now, I want you to go ahead and continue this 10 more times. So again, continue doing this tight stitch around for 10 more times. After completing the 10 rows, it should look like this as it's coming out of the bottom, and you're going to go ahead and remove the loop off of the outer peg that you had put it on. Take the knot out of it, and then flip it to the inside. You need it to be on the inside of the project. And now what we're going to do, which is I always find this part pretty cool to do, is you're just going to gently pull this string so it closes off this as much as it can. It may not be fully closed, so you're not going to force it, you're just going to gently pull it, and as you see, it helps to close up the project as much as you can. As you do more rows, it'll close off more. But again, this is just going to be on the bottom, so you don't necessarily have to have it closed off as tight as you normally would for when we do other projects that we want the bind off on. Now what you want to do is, I like to tie it off now because it's easier when it's on the loom and it's a little more firm or more flat than if you waited till you were taking it off the loom. So go ahead, and what I usually do is I want to work this yarn on the inside because this is obviously going to be the outside of the project. So I'm going to now work it on the in and tie it off. So I'm just going to reach through and bring my yarn on this side now, and we're going to tie it off. And what I like to do is, what you're going to do is you're going to go opposite of where the yarn is and put your crochet hook through a loop. And I may not have the right crochet hook for this, because normally I can grab a loop. Let me see if I have a skinnier one. Okay, so we're going to go ahead with, I'm using a really tiny loom, and you're going to try to find a loop on the other side that you can pull this yarn through with whatever loom or crochet hook you have. Whatever will get it through to the other side here. And you're going to do that and pull it through. And then you're going to find another opposite side if you can. And again, you're going to pull it through. And just be careful because we might have attacked part that we didn't want to attack there. Okay. And now what you can do is you're going to just go ahead, go one more time. This time when you pull it through, let it still kind of have a loop, and go ahead and tie it like you're tying a pair of shoes. And again, it doesn't matter if there's still a gap because this is going to be on the bottom of the flower pot anyway. Go ahead and tie it again. I always like to do it a couple times, especially because this is going to have dirt in it. You just want your knots to be as secure as you can. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to work this loop one more time over this way, one of the strands that I have. And I'm again going to tie it together. Like I said, you just want it as sturdy as you can on the bottom to support the weight of the pot. Okay, and again, it's okay if it's still got a gap. As you can see, there's a little gap. That's fine. Once you've tied it as many times as you feel comfortable, I'm going to do one more time just for safekeeping. Then what you can do is grab your scissors and you can cut off some of the tail. Now we can go back to working on the project like we were before. Now, this time we're going to do the purl stitch, and we're going to be doing it a little different because you're going to actually take both these loops off when you make your new loop. Normally we would only have one strand on, but this time we've got to remember that we still have the 2 loops here from before. So do the purl stitch, and you're going to go down through both those loops, bring your working yarn over and up through to create your new loop, and then take it off of the peg, which you may need a little help because again it's still there from the other stitch. It might be a little tighter to get off. Go ahead and take it off and place this new loop back on the peg. So again, we'll go to the next peg, do the same thing, take your go through the 2 loops, bring your working yarn up through to create a loop, and then take it off the peg. And place that new loop back on the peg. So go ahead and do 3 rows of the purl stitch. Again, remembering the first time around you're going to be having 2 loops come off with it. But again, go ahead and do this purl stitch for 3 times, and then I will come back here and show you the next step. After completing the 3 rows of purl, it will look like this as it's coming down through. You can kind of see that we got the purl going on. Now, I did forget to mention, I believe, that this pot that I'm using stands 6 inches tall. And what I like about it, if you can see, is it's kind of a straight up. It doesn't come out a lot like some flower pots do. So again, this is more designed for those pots that are kind of a little more straight. If they go out a little bit, then it might fit a little differently. But I just wanted to say again, this has a 4-inch diameter and it is 6 inches tall. I wouldn't use like a ceramic pot in with this yarn just because the heaviness could really mess it up. Again, you're going to be putting dirt and flowers in here, so you don't want it to be a really heavy pot to go into the yarn. From here we're going to do the drop stitch. I'm not sure how well you remember. I do have a video on it, so go ahead and make sure you look that up if you're not that familiar with it. But what we're going to do is I'll show you right here. You go across to the next peg, you wrap it, you knit it over, then you re-wrap it. Now you can choose to wrap it 1 more time, 2 times, 3 times, however many times you want to wrap it for the look of it, because later after you do a full row of this, you'll be removing these extra loops off, and that gives you the drop stitch that you'll see down below. I am only going to just wrap it once. Then you move on to the next one. So you leave this alone, move on to the next, knit it over, re-wrap it, move over to the next, wrap it, knit it over, re-wrap it, and continue this all the way around the loom. Now as you get back to the beginning here, you're going to need to be a little careful. What we're going to do is we're going to go right into the next stitch we want to do, just to lock in this last peg to make it a little easier. So this is the last peg in this row, and we need to re-wrap it. And you're going to need to hold it because we're going to be moving into a different stitch, but we need to hold this loop here, and we need to remove the top loop off of all these other ones. Okay, so we need to go ahead and we need to hold on to this. So it's going to be a little tricky. You're going to hold on to that drop stitch, remove the top loops. And what you can do, what we're going to do here, because we're going to do the next stitch, is I want to lock this in place so that I can go around and easily remove them off. And the next stitch we're going to be doing is the figure 8. So I'm going to come out here and I'm just going to do 1 figure 8 to lock this in place so that we can go around and work the rest of the drop stitches off. This will help to lock it in place a little bit. So now you can go and gently remove the top loop off of the pegs for our drop stitch. Okay, so all our drop stitches are done. Okay, now go ahead and we're going to continue doing the figure 8 stitch. You see we get them dropping behind it. It's going to look a little weird where the beginning is just because of how we move from one stitch to the other. Excuse me. Now I'm going to continue with the drop, or the, oop, I lost some loops over here. Good thing I caught that. Get these loops back up there. Okay. Okay. Cotton yarn does work a little different than other yarn, it feels. Okay, all my loops on there. Now we're going to do the figure 8 stitch. What's that? Is you bring out your yarn, go around, and then knit it over. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, I'm trying to be careful because I'm losing my drop stitches over here because of the yarn, so hang on one second. Okay. Come back out here to make it a little easier for me. Ugh. It's usually not this big of a problem. This cotton yarn just wants to slide off a little more. Okay, so we got our loops on there. Continue with our figure 8. And remember, it's going to be different for you. You're not going to be holding your loom the way I am, so it'll be a lot easier and you won't have to worry about stuff. So again, the next figure 8, go around, and then knit it over. So I'm going to go off camera and work this back to the beginning row, and then I'll tell you what to do after that. When you get done of that figure 8 stitch, your yarn should end and come out of this peg and not this one for right that moment. And as you can see from the back, we get this nice little drop stitch going. It's going to look better once it's off the loom, but we got our drop stitch. And again, however many times you rewrap the peg will determine how far this goes down. So what we're going to do now is I want to repeat what we just did, which means we do one row of drop stitch, one row of the figure 8 stitch. Now because of this, it's going to look a little wonky and may not line up exactly right on one side, but it'll still be really cute, is we're going to need to finish up this last peg in figure 8. So we're going to go over here and we're going to knit the last part of the figure 8, oops, excuse me, which will incorporate the first peg as well. And now we're just going to knit this over. And what that's going to do is join those two and bring our working yarn to the peg we need it, which is the peg just before the start of the new row. And then we can go ahead and do our drop stitch again, which is the knit over and the rewrapping once. And we're going to continue that around the loom. And then again, when you get back to the beginning, go ahead and do a row of figure 8 stitch. We're going to count that as a set, which means you do one row of drop stitch, then one row of figure 8, and then I want you to continue that for this many rows. After completing 2 sets of the drop stitch and then the figure 8, you're going to get to the very end of doing your, I'm still at the very end of finishing off my last figure 8 that I need to do. I'm actually going to say we're going to continue the figure 8 all by itself for another 3 rows. So remember, you're going to keep on doing the figure 8 stitch as you've been doing, wrapping it around, knitting it over. Continue that in the round for 3 more times, and then move on to the almost end of the steps. After completing the 3 rows of the figure 8, I want to let you know that to your eye, because you know you're going to notice one side's going to be a little wonkier than the others, just because we were transitioning from one stitch into the other. But it won't take away from the overall look, and it'll look great on the other spots. But I just didn't want someone to make this and be like, wait a minute, it looks kind of weird. It's going to be that way because it's transferring from one stitch to the other because of the difference of what the stitches are that we're doing. For this next row, before we take this off, we're going to go ahead and do what I like to call the chunky stitch. Again, the stitch that it's called that right there. We're going to go ahead, and that means we wrap all the pegs so that they end up having 4 loops on them, and we knit the bottom 3 over the top 1. So I just need to look and make sure we're getting ready to start it. I'm going to do, I'm going to do my last little figure 8 here so that my yarn will come off of this peg. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to go around and wrap the loom so that there will end up being 4 loops. So we just go ahead and wrap it. Now, as I oftentimes say in videos, this again, we have 3 on there right now. And what I often tell you in videos is that when you start working the next part over, it might be easier to work 1 peg at a time instead of having them all wrapped the 4 times. But again, it's going to be whatever works easy for you. I'm going to go off, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these bottom 3 up over that top one. But I need to go off screen because my angle's a little weird. Now, because of the figure 8 stitch we did before, knitting over might be a little tight. I just want to explain that. So take your time, and as always, I may have wrapped a little tighter than I should have when I did the figure 8, so keep in mind of your tension. That's very important. So again, you're going to grab all 3, and you're going to go up and over the top loop. So wrap it and get the bottom 3 up over the top. And continue this all the way around the loom, and then we'll go for the next part there. So continue around till you get to the last peg. Getting ready to do my last peg. Okay. Now comes the part of getting this off the loom. I'm just moving them down a little bit for now. Okay, and this is how you should have it looking at the bottom. Just to give you a better idea. Remember, the one spot kind of looks a little wonky, but it's not too bad. I just really like the way it looks like on this side. So to take this off, we're going to do the crochet cast off. Excuse me. And what we're going to do, get your working yarn out of the way, is you're going to wrap. I'm going to start with my end peg this time. Knit it over once, twice, 3, 4 times. And then I'm going to take this loop and move it over to here. Tighten it a little bit. Knit that over. Now do another time of rewrapping 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And move it to the next peg. And knit over again. Continue this process all the way around the loom until you get to the last peg, and then we'll go from there. I am on my last little stitch here to get to the last peg, and I just got to move it over, knit it over, and still do your 4, your 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now go ahead and you're going to want to cut yourself a working tail. Always give yourself more yarn than you think. Sometimes I at least give like a little close to 12 inches, just because I like to have enough. And then go ahead and remove this loop off and place it on a crochet hook. And now you need to join your last stitch with your first stitch. So we're going to go ahead and go over to our new first stitch over here, and you're going to take the back loop across the top. Now go ahead, let's find your tail again here, pull it all the way through, give a little tug, and now go ahead and do a little knot. And do one more little knot. You can choose to cut off the string now, or you can wait it until you get the whole project done. And then from here we should be able to place it just like a hat on top of our flower pot. See if I can zoom out here for you to see. Just going to take it like a hat and put it over top of the flower pot. So I want the base to be, this is where we did the drawstring bind off. Now you can turn it around, and as you can see, looking pretty cute on there. We'll do it better from farther away, but that's just so now what we have to do, because otherwise, as you can see, this is going to slide down. We need now to create the handles, so we can have 4-point handles, so this will actually be able to sit in there. And remember too, that once you get dirt in there, this is not designed for heavy plants. I want to repeat that. This is a lightweight flower pot that we're using is plastic. I would not recommend doing ceramic right now. You can test it out if you want, but that's just my little disclaimer. And now, like I said, we're going to work on doing the other part. Now that's one of the reasons I like the crochet bind off, because we already have our gaps. We're going to make a really long cord. We're going to thread it through these holes, and then we're going to create 2 spots that we can use. It's going to be really cute. For the actual cord, we're going to do an I-cord, and this will be the cord that will weave in the holes that we have in the flower pot holder in order for it to hang. What we're going to do, again, with the I-cord is you only need 3 pegs. I'm going to use the same loom that we did for the actual plant holder, but if you want to use a different loom, maybe you want to use a finer gauge loom and have the I-cord look a little smaller, that's totally up to you. I just wanted to keep it all in one project. So all you're going to do is create your slip knot, leave yourself a long tail. We're going to need it later for some tying, so maybe about 12 inches if you want, and then make your slip knot. Place it on your pegs. You only need 3 of them. Okay, and you're just going to wrap the next 2. Okay, and then bring that yarn right back in front and lay it across the top. And then go ahead and knit it over. Don't hold it too tight, otherwise you might have trouble getting it to knit over. So then just knit it over. Excuse me, and knit it over the other 2. Okay, this is not that difficult. Get over there. Okay, and you can kind of use that tail you have to kind of tug it a little bit. And the 3rd one, now when you're ready to do it again, just take your working yarn behind. As you can see, you're going to go behind, and you're going to go right across and rewrap it like that. And then knit over again. I would say after each little knit over, just grab your working tail, maybe just give it a little, or your little tail you have from the beginning, a little small tug. Again, from the back, you're going to come over and wrap it in the front and knit it over. And again, giving this a little tug. So this is all you're going to do the cord that we're going to use. And because we need such a long cord, I will actually go off camera and continue doing this. But here's a little look on the back. It doesn't look like much now, but as you keep going, you'll see that it'll look cooler. I'll do a little bit more rows. I'll do 5 more rows and then show you what the back look like before we continue on doing with the rest of the rows. So again, I'm going to go off camera and do 5 more rows and show you before we do the main part. Quick update after doing the 5 extra rows for you. This is how it should be looking when it works its way out of the loom. Again, this is how it will look from the back. So I'm going to continue off screen until I have done this many rows right here, and then we'll be ready to take the I-cord off. I just did 140 rows of doing the I-cord. I don't think I've ever made an I-cord that big. But again, it doesn't look like it'll be too bad. I wanted to make sure it was enough to go around the flower pot, and then of course extra for hanging. Again, what I love about doing an I-cord is if you do the 140 rows, you may be like, wait, that's too much, or that's not enough. You can easily whip up a new cord however long that you want it to be. So again, that's something you can easily modify for this very simply. So when we want to take the I-cord off, let's just go down here and see. I do it pretty simply. I just take one loop from one side, move it to the middle one, knit it over. Oops, how did I miss a loop? Get over there. Okay, what did I do? There we go. Alright, and now I go to the other side, I take that loop off, and I move it to the other middle one. My camera angle usually makes it a little hard to see, and then knit it over. Now again, I'm going to leave myself a long tail like I normally do. I like having enough room to work, so about 12 inches or so. It's always better to have enough to work with than not enough. And then all you're going to do is take it off the loop or the peg, gently, place it on your crochet hook. I'm going to go this way since I have so much cord. And then we're just going to take the working yarn and go through the hole. Give it a tug, and then add an extra knot. And that will secure our I-cord hold. Our I-cord, excuse me. Now what we need to do is we need to put it on the pot. So let me raise this up here a little bit to make it a little easier to see what I'm doing. Okay. Now to do this part, we need to weave it in. I could take it back off the pot if I wanted to, but I'm choosing not to. I'm going to just work it around as we go. So what we're going to do is get your I-cord kind of out of your way, ready to work. Take one end of it, pick a spot. Again, this is where we started, so if you still kept this on, you're going to know where you started. And you're just going to work it in where we did our crochet cast off. Work it in one way, go to the next hole, and bring it in. So again, we're just threading it in and out of the project. So again, weave it back in, come back to the front. And that's all you're going to do is work your way around the project, moving the I-cord in and out of the holes. Closer to the end, and if you need to, gently kind of pull some of it through. Work your way through so you can have more to work with when you get to the end. So again, whatever way you went in, you go out the next one. Okay. Again, that's what I like about the crochet cast off, and you got those holes right there. You're just using them to work the project through. So we're back to the beginning. This is our starting yarn that we had well before into the project. And now what we can do is we find our two ends of our I-cord, and we're going to tie them as close to each other as we can. Just a simple knot. And give it an extra tug. I know it may be a little hard to see white on white, but we just give it a tug, and we want to knot it a couple more times. So that's all we're doing, is we're knotting it a few times just to strengthen up that spot. And the way to test it is after you knot, just kind of give it a strong tug and see whether or not it comes apart any. If you're unsure, go ahead and knot it again. Now take your scissors and you can trim it. Like I said, I left a lot because you never know if you want to change up your mind, and then just give it a trim, leaving however many you choose to. And then the original one that we still had on here that I never did anything with, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of work that into a loop down here just to get it out of my way. I'm just going to loop it and add one more extra knot before I cut the tail. And then you trim this one. Now you're going to say, okay, now what do we do? We've got it all done. We've got it weaved in. Now you need to find your point. So you're going to kind of, I look at it as you're looking at it as you want north, south, east, and west. So we're going to find the one that's nearest over here. Give that a tug, because we still got extra over here that we need to kind of work through. So what you'll do is you'll find your 4 points. Like you have one here, well, you're going to want one over here, and you're going to want one, like I said, if you're doing all 4 points, here. So you kind of want to work this so you can get even spots. Now what I decided to do is actually just do 2 spots that it comes out from. As you can see, I just have 2 big loops instead. I got a little confused on what I had planned when I said 4, so I apologize for that. I just wanted there to be 4 ropes that would come up, and for some reason I was thinking I had to do 1 each spot, so I apologize. But again, you get it adjusted as the way you want, and then you'll have your little hanging thing, and I will show a better picture of how it looks hanging in just about a second. So again, that's all you're going to do is you're going to wrap that around, and you'll have it'll close off the top some, so that's why this is good for, like, maybe you have a couple flowers in it, you want some that probably the stem would come up a little longer, because it will kind of close itself up. And again, as you add in the weight of the dirt and stuff, it might even close it off even more. So it might be really pretty to have like a single flower in there, or what you can easily do is try to decrease the amount of things you did on the side if you wanted to try to lay down a little further on the pot. But this is hopefully a way to just give you a general idea of how you can go about covering a flower pot and having just a simple display for in your home. Just a quick reminder, as you add dirt into this, it will weigh it down. So if you don't want to have it be as closed off at the top as you see right there, go ahead and do a little bit less of what you see for stitches in the pattern, and that should help with that. And again, you just have your 2 things that you can easily join together with like a ring or anything like that in order to be able to hang this up outside or adjust it however you see fit.